In the late autumn of 1794, the village of Smithfield, Virginia, which would later become Middleway, West Virginia, was a quiet settlement of log cabins and farmland. Among its most prosperous residents was Adam Livingston, a stern, hard-working Lutheran who had moved his family from Pennsylvania. Livingston was a man of orderly habits and deep religious convictions, but he held a fierce, unyielding prejudice against the Roman Catholic Church. The trouble began on a night when the autumn wind blew exceptionally cold, driving a torrential rainstorm across the hills. A frantic knock sounded at the Livingston door. When Adam opened it, he found a traveling stranger drenched to the bone, shivering alongside an exhausted horse. Hospitality was an unwritten law of the frontier, so Adam stepped aside and welcomed the man into the warmth of his home. As the night wore on, the stranger took violently ill. His chest heaved with a ragged cough, and it became clear to everyone in the room that he would not survive until morning. Recognizing his own approaching end, the man looked up at Adam and made a desperate final plea. "Please fetch a Catholic priest so that I might receive my last rites." Adam's hospitality vanished, replaced by his long-held biases. He flatly refused, declaring that no Catholic priest would ever cross his threshold. Within hours, the stranger died, denied the spiritual comfort he had begged for. The next morning, Adam arranged for a hasty burial, interring the anonymous traveler in an ordinary, unconsecrated patch of ground on the farm. Almost immediately, the natural order of the Livingston household fractured. It began during the wake, when the candles surrounding the corpse repeatedly snuffed out on their own, refusing to stay lit despite a lack of draft. Days later, the family was kept awake by the thunderous sound of invisible horses galloping in circles around the house at midnight. Then the destruction grew physical. Heavy crockery lifted off shelves without a visible hand, smashing onto the floorboards. Hot logs from the hearth leaped past the fireplace screen, rolling across the room and threatening to burn the cabin down. On the farm, the family witnessed their cattle sicken and die, and their barn mysteriously burned to the ground. In one of the most unsettling events, a neighbor watched in horror alongside Mrs. Livingston as a flock of ducks walking through the yard suddenly had their heads cleanly severed by an unseen force. But it was the auditory phenomenon that gave the haunting its historic name. Throughout the house, the air filled with an incessant sharp sound. Clip, clip, clip. It sounded exactly like a giant pair of tailor's shears opening and closing. With the sound came the damage. The family discovered that their clothing, bedsheets, blankets, and even leather boots stored inside locked trunks were being systematically ruined. Every piece of fabric was defaced with precise, crescent moon-shaped cutouts. Word of the clipping spook spread quickly through the region. Skeptics traveled to the farm to prove it was a hoax, only to leave terrified. One proud Presbyterian lady from nearby Martinsburg arrived determined to expose the fraud. To protect her expensive new black silk cap, she wrapped it in a silk handkerchief and tucked it deep inside her pocket before entering the house. She sat in the parlor for an hour, hearing the chilling snip-snip noise echo in the corners. When she left the property and reached into her pocket, she found her handkerchief perfectly intact, but the silk cap inside had been shredded into narrow ribbons. Driven to near madness by sleeplessness and the financial ruin of his farm, Adam sought help. Local Protestant ministers visited to pray over the home, but their efforts only angered the entity. During one session, a rain of stones flew out of the chimney, forcing the clergyman to flee. Desperate, Adam prayed for guidance. One night, he had a vivid dream of a man wearing distinctive religious robes, and a voice whispered to him that this was the person who could bring relief. When he described the robes to a neighbor, the neighbor told him he was describing a Catholic priest. Swallowing his pride, Adam traveled to Shepherdstown to find Father Dennis Cahill, an Irish immigrant priest. When Adam first saw Father Cahill, he wept, recognizing him instantly as the man from his dream. Father Cahill agreed to return with the desperate farmer. Upon arriving at the homestead, the priest sprinkled holy water throughout the rooms and said a series of prayers. Instantly, a bag of money that had vanished weeks prior materialized on the threshold, and the clipping sounds ceased. The peace was temporary, however, and the disturbances flared up again a short time later. Father Cahill returned, this time accompanied by Father Demetrius Galitzin, a Russian prince who had renounced his nobility to become a frontier priest. Together they celebrated a traditional mass inside the Livingston home and conducted a formal blessing. This time the clearing was permanent. The invisible shears fell silent, and the family's torment finally ended. The experience radically transformed Adam Livingston. Moved by the deliverance of his home, he and his entire family converted to Catholicism. In 1802, before moving back to Pennsylvania, Adam deeded 34 acres of his farm to the Catholic Church as an act of gratitude and penance, specifying it be used to sustain a priest. Today that very land is known as the Priestfield Pastoral Retreat Center, a quiet place of meditation where visitors still walk the grounds, mindful of the strange history that gave the village its enduring nickname, Wizard Clip. Tune in next week for more spooky tales,